The Circuit of the Americas is easily one of my favourite tracks to drive in F123. However, it's also one of my least favourite to create a car setup for. And that's simply because COTA has a little bit of everything. There are long straights combined with fast corners ripped right out of Silverstone or Spa, and then there's a few very slow corners. All of these elements make creating a car setup for COTA in F123 extremely tricky. But once you do get around the setup creation process, this track is mightily fun to drive, partly due to that variety throughout a lap. With this American track featuring so many different qualities from long straights to fast and slow corners, our aero setup will always be a middle ground between all of them, without really specialising in one particular area. I've gone for 38 on the front wing aero and 34 on the rear. This is pretty balanced with a focus on front end turning ability, which is mightily important, especially through the first sweeping sector of the lap. The transmission setup is pretty much as low as we can go. I've set the on-throttle diff to just 52%, which will aid with traction out of slower corners, and it's especially important to get a good launch out of turn 11, which leads onto the long straight. I've then set the off-throttle diff to 50%, which will aid rotation into corners as much as possible. The suspension geometry focuses a lot on reducing understeer, as too much understeer is a real killer around COTA. Go with -2.7 and -1 on the camber, and then opt for 0.04 and 0.12 on the toe. Lowering the rear camber and toe will help with both traction and reducing drag. Much like the rest of our car setup, I've gone for a suspension setup which promotes a really responsive front end. Stiffen the front suspension to 30 while keeping the rear suspension pretty soft at just 8. Then go with 7 and 1 on the anti-roll bars and 34 and 37 on the ride height. For the brakes, opt for 100% brake pressure and then go with a slightly more frontward brake bias of 56%. This will help reduce braking distance, especially into the heavy braking zones such as into turn 1 and turn 12. With so many fast and long corners, tyre wear can be a little bit of an issue. Turns 17 to 19 in particular will put a lot of strain on your tyres, as will those S's in the first sector. So lower all tyre pressures all around with 22.5 psi on both fronts and 20.3 psi on both rears. And that will finish out our car setup for the Circuit of the Americas in F123. This track really tests your car in so many ways. So this car setup has been designed to create a car which doesn't necessarily excel in one area, but is instead very good throughout the entire lap. If you're enjoying these car setups so far, please consider subscribing and hit that like button, as it really helps the YouTube algorithm show this to others who don't already know our videos exist. And for now guys, enjoy this setup and enjoy the track, and I'll see you out there on track.